That's great.
Looking at the bans, we've got an interesting set here. Shy choosing to ban the Reno Mage, and Fluffy choosing to ban Rogue. When you bring, Priest and you bring Reno Warlock, I can definitely see how Rogue can be problematic. Reno Mage is a little bit interesting to me, though, especially because Shy, once again, chose not to bring a Shaman. And that's what Reno Mage really excels at. So it's one of those fascinating things that, I really feel like Reno Mage constantly instills a lot of fear into people.
Right.
Or maybe it's the fact that he just doesn't like to play against it.
And his warrior deck is like a dragon rumbling warrior. It's not like a pirate warrior, which is another deck that you'd be scared of with the Reno Mage.
Right.
And like you say, just instilling fear and just banning it out because it's the best deck, not necessarily because it's the best matchup, I think.
Yeah, it could be. And also, if you feel like your best matchup against the Reno Mage is Dragon Priest, and then second to that is the Reno Mage Mirror. Okay, maybe you feel like it's not exactly a good choice to bet against. But I'm always in favor of banning Shaman. I'm always in favor of banning some of these really top-tier decks. So we can go ahead and go into game number 1 here with the Reno Warlock versus the Priest. And that's going to really put Fluffy a little bit into an awkward position because Reno Warlock, one of the few really good matchups it has in the current metagame, is against the Dragon Priest.
Yeah, so that's working out pretty nicely for him, although look at this opening hand from Fluffy. It's going to be nice to get those dragons, nice to get that curve and have the options with the Shadow Word Pain, etc. early on. It's nice to draw your spells as a Dragon Priest because quite often you just end up with a whole handful of stats you can't get onto the table.
Yep. Well, I mean, he's got at least the Twilight Whelp to start things off, but this is only Dragon, so if he wants to activate the Twilight Guardian, he's going to need some help from his deck, because right now he's got a lot of spells, and that's usually the problem of Dragon Priest. If you draw a little bit awkwardly, you can falter, and then if you lose momentum against Reno Warlock, they can seize it back, because one minion, like a Twilight Drake, can slay 3 or 4 minions on
Right, I was making the spells comment before the Holy Nova appeared, and now it's too many spells. Now you need to draw stuff that you can play, and he hasn't managed that, and this is the Curse of Priest, which your hero power on turn 2, if you don't have something to do, says miss a go.
Interesting that he picked up a Doomsayer. I think Shy still feels free to tap, even though you kind of want to start halting the Dragon Priest process, development process. I think tapping into a Twilight Drake is just that much more meaningful, and you're not under that much pressure. And if you really feel like you need to get something onto the board, you still have the opportunity to next turn to life tap and play Doomsayer if you want to be very defensive.
Yeah, you've got to, I mean, I agree entirely here, but you've got to be careful that you don't let these things get out of control. If you start playing catch-up, you Shadow Bolt 1, and then he hits you for another 2 damage, and then you hit it with another one-on-one removal, and he hits you again for 2. It can get going, but
sure.
I feel that a tap there would have been perfectly valid as well.
Maybe he feels like because he has Kazakis, he already has a 4-mana play, so he didn't necessarily have to dig nearly as much.
So very little to be gained by getting the 4-mana play when you've already got this stuff.
Well, I feel like there's a lot to be gained if you get the Twilight Drake or the Mountain Giant, but specifically only those 2 instances, those 2 cards. But it's a very big impact.
I assume that he'll go for the 2 friendly minions here, personally, but there's definitely other options. And
yeah, and you can summon a 5/5 with it as well. Dealing 5 damage is generally pretty good against almost everything at Dragon Priest. They do have a couple of 6 health minions that are annoying with the Draconoid Operative and the Twilight Guardian. But I feel like removing that is really good, just because you want to make sure to control the board state. Would not hate having the 5/5 Demon, though, because that's very beefy and usually deals with most of Dragon Priest stuff.
And now Fluffy's early nightmares of not having much of a curve are well and truly sorted. He's got a whole bunch of 5-drops. And the only nightmare he's having is which one to play first, which is always a nice nightmare to have.
Well, Blackwing Corruptor is very easy choice here because it just snipes the 3/3. You don't really want to give value to the 3/3 killing your Twilight Whelp. I just want to see if Shy actually picked that Kazakis Potion option of dealing 5 damage, or if he chose to go for the 5/5 Demon.
5 damage and draw 2 cards, I believe it was. Don't point it at your own face. That's the wrong way. This is much better. And there we go.
He's at 9 cards, so it looks like he's still safe from overdrawing.
And there's no massive panic at all for Shy here. Well, he's still got Reno in hand, but
wow. That's That's a lot of good stuff coming out here. Sylvanas is excellent for being able to control the state of the board. Ragnaros is a good finisher. Siphon Still, sometimes you just need to remove their really annoying stuff like Twilight Drake. How else do you kill it? So there's a lot of good viable choices here.
I think I'm going to go the other way and say that the way that the Reno eventually wins this game is by playing a Jiraxxus and not getting a Ragnaros in its face. But Fluffy deciding to go with the good stuff, the Sylvanas, the more short-term stuff. Oh, Fluffy's actually already playing a Ragnaros. So some of the surprise value would have been gone there. I've just looked at his list that I've got notes on. And he's actually already got his own Ragnaros. So 2 Ragnaroses might be spoiling the broth a bit.
You know, funny that we were talking about dealing with Twilight Drake and it just happened to come into the hand of Shy. I'd probably be tempted to play the Mistress of Mixtures in this position as Shy because you start to get into the problem of the Reno Warlock or Handlock. You guys have probably experienced this too, where you have 9 cards and you're only playing 1 card per turn. You can't actually life tap anymore, so you need to find a way to dump 2 cards so you can get access to that hero power.
Yeah, and the hand that he has is pretty heavy. He's going to be playing on curve quite likely for some time, so the chance to sneak that down was definitely a good idea to stop his hand from filling up. This is an interesting looking turn as well because 7 with a handful of 3s and 4s and 7s and 6s and 1s. God, that's a really awkward phrase. You can pretty much do any pair of those things.
I'm looking at how good the Abyssal Enforcer is here. It allows you to kill the Draconoid Operative, damage your own Twilight Drake, and kill off the 2-1. And I don't think that's necessarily that bad of a proposition because you kind of want to weaken the value that Sylvanas is going to get. You don't have Spellbreaker, so it almost feels like you don't have a choice. Yeah,
the Drake's almost a little bit too good. So if you could do 8 damage to it and sort of clear up the board on the way, that seems like a good idea.
Okay. I mean, he took a different line, which is I'm going to try to make sure Sylvanas can't kill herself on anything and steal, and give me time to tap into Spellbreaker or some other options, perhaps.
And Fluffy's got to factor that in. Fluffy has the option to defend the Sylvanas himself here with the shield and various shenanigans. But if he's thinking that my opponent doesn't want her, or doesn't want her to die, maybe he heals up the Operative. That's what he's gone with.
Yeah, there's also the option for Shy next turn to just play Twisting Nether and deal with the board that way, and maybe bait Fluffy into loading the board a little bit more. But if Fluffy's paying attention, you should know coming up on turn 8, you absolutely should not go overboard on the board. Just, play very slow and make sure that you don't fall too far behind on the value game. And
that's exactly what he's doing, just developing some value by drawing cards and going to make sure as well to do a bit of damage to face rather than worrying about this Twilight Drake, so that if the Twisting Nether does come down, then Shy's in a much more precarious position. And now the other 4-drop, which is now a 3-drop, comes into hand.
So does this warrant a Twisting Nether? I mean, Shy was sort of baiting his opponent to go into it. He doesn't have a Shadow Flame, otherwise he'd love to go for Dirty Rat Shadow Flame. Let's see here. It's a little bit awkward for everything from what I see, because the Twilight Drake only goes down to a 4/6. And that means that it guarantees a steal from Sylvanas, even if you played pretty weak minions into this.
And the reason you're thinking so long about not nethering is because when you've done the Twisting Nether, it just gives the priest license to go crazy on board and start playing that hand that you know is full of far more minions. And we can see that Bran into Azure Drake on an empty board would be ridiculously good for Fluffy here, especially with Nether Sprite still in hand. He may even wait till turn 10.
Yeah. I'm trying to see if maybe he can just play... well, I'm looking at Twisted Nether. I think the other opportunity is to play Reno. He has 2 4/6s on the board. It's not like the worst.
You get a better Nether next turn, maybe.
The worst thing about leaving the minions on board here is not just the Sylvanas, but that Northshire Cleric is really threatening because it gives a lot of card draw to Priest. Speaking of card draw, like the fact that you get 2 Netherspite Historian activations here is massive for the Priest because you can pick up some really amazing stuff.
Yeah, Fluffy's going to go with the Azure Drake and trust that Shy can't kill the Bran. We can see he can, but I think Fluffy may have thought that the Twisting Nether meant there was no removal for the Bran and that it might stick around and be mega greedy.
Yeah, this is better tempo on the board. So at first I look at Netherspite Historian because I always feel like that kind of rounds out the late game that you really need to hit.
2 Isiras! Yeah, sure.
But one thing that I didn't necessarily pay as close attention to was your mana usage would be a lot weaker. You would float 3 mana in that instance, unless you picked up a weaker dragon from Netherspite.
Alright, so going to be playing The Giant, obviously, something with the Reno seems like a consideration here. But he's going to Shadow Button Giant, which is going to mean that he's going to get to a very, very low health total to get the absolute maximum out of this Reno. But it also means that Shadow Word Death's going to be just beautifully efficient here.
Shadow Word Death, Shadow Word Pain is also very good as well. That leaves you 4 mana, enough to play Twilight Guardian. In this case, he's choosing to play the Draconoid Operative once again, and looks like he has another option to pick up Ragnaros.
This time he takes it.
It's just the strongest individual card that he can pick in that position. I don't think it's bad. And looks like right here, Fluffy has no problem just pressuring his opponent. And I like it, you know?
Yep.
A lot of the positions that we were talking about was playing very defensive and reactive, using Shadow Word Pain, using playing a lot of these like slower things, but he wants to be fast because he doesn't want to give a chance for Reno Warlock to win the game.
I mean, the Reno Warlock doesn't have to have the Reno, of course, as well. So this board state says, I'm going to kill you next turn, and with the Rag in my hand, I'm going to kill you hard. So you better have not just one answer for next turn, but you need to follow it up and clear this up in the subsequent turns from that. And with that in mind, I think we will see Shy have to Reno here. He can get the Bruiser down as well, so that's not too bad.
Yeah, considering Reno and then what is the follow-up plays afterwards, the Bruiser is the one that stands out the most. And I don't think anything else really sticks out to me.
You've got to work out whether you want to use the Power Overwhelming to clear and start removing one of your winning methods. Just to get rid of this operative. And he feels the need to get rid of this 5/6 to protect his Bruiser, basically.
I wonder if Fluffy just feels like he can play Ragnaros in this position. Oh, well, he's got 2.
Which one would you like?
Probably the one from the deck, as opposed to the one stored.
The one that you definitely play the one from your deck. You don't want to give the information away.
Are you tempted to do that? Primarily because, one, you know, it's the strongest play you have, but 2, you also discovered twice from your opponent's deck, and you saw that Siphon Soul was still not drawn. So your opponent's best way to deal with it, now that Power Overwhelming is gone, is Shadow Flame play of some sort.
Yeah, the other thing with the Power Overwhelming going is that your opponent is now in a situation where he's pretty much relying on that Jiraxxus to get the value he needs to win the game. He's lost his burst combo. And so Ragnaros, if you play one of them down, you may encourage that Jiraxxus to come down. Oh, I'm safe, the Ragnaros is gone. And it's like, surprise! Here's some more fire to your face.
Okay. Well, Fluffy decides to play a little bit more value-oriented, so he can get this Holy Nova to get some good damage in while he can. But it feels like it's a little bit slow, so that might give Shy an opportunity to get some more time to buy until he's Leroy, Power Overwhelming, Faceless. Oh, wait, no, I apologize. He's Power Overwhelming. Nice.
Yeah, it's fine. It's your first one of the day. Yeah. Just too many Ragnaroses for words here. It's going to be Ragnaros, trying to snipe Ragnaros.
This is going to turn into a classic Rag Wars at this point.
Rag Wars. And yep, 50-50 you kill it, 50-50 you do a whole chunk of damage to face. You'd rather kill the Ragnaros, but the face is certainly not a disaster. And that's absolutely fine. And starting to wonder how Shy gets out of this. He can obviously get rid of one of those with a potion, and after that his hand is starting to become a little tiny bit sad.
Well, I think you can face us the opponent's Rag and see if you can go for more board presence again. But then you have the classic issue of your opponent has the second Rag.
The classic issue.
Rag.
That situation that comes up all of the time.
It happens very often. Like back when Priest used to play Thoughtsteal, he would get Rag and then they'd be able to do this. Except Fluffy doesn't have enough mana to Shadow Word Death and Rag.
I'm forgetting that even though I'm the old man in this partnership, you're actually the old Hearthstone man in this partnership.
I have no more excuses. I've seen it all, and yet I'm still missing stuff. Jilma coming down is just like a lot of pressure, so Shy might feel obligated to react strongly here, but he picks up Emperor Thorsan, but he already dropped so much of his combo, and it's not exactly the most beneficial. But at the same time, you do get things like Jiraxxus for 8 mana. You get Shadow Flame is cheaper. It's not really trivial stuff.
Yeah, and Shy is playing a game as if it's a normal game of Hearthstone right now, which he's entitled to do.
It's a great card to pick up, because now Power Overwhelming Shadow Flame is an actual legitimate threat that Fluffy can't play around.
Fluffy has 1 in 2 lethal, though, here.
Oh, yeah, you're right. He tapped himself
just into 50-50 lethal range.
into Ragnaros's kill range.
And I mean, Fluffy will be taking his time to make sure he's not overlooked something here, but seems pretty straightforward. Go face, Shadow Word the 2-2. I guess that's the bit he's considering, is how much he needs to waste that Shadow Word on there. But I think we'll see that play.
You have a 50% chance to...
Oh!
Wait, what?
I'm assuming that Fluffy has drawn a card that's not on his deck list. I may be wrong.
What? A second Azure Drake? No, Fluffy's offline. He disconnected. Wait, what? Wait, no, that's not how it works at all.
No! And we're going to have to wait and see what the admins have to say about all of this. Presumably there was an admin at the table when that happened, is all I can think of.
Yeah, that one was really shocking because, I mean, Fluffy had a 50%.
Yeah, he's got Schrodinger's Ragnaros ready to fire.
And he was... Because even if his Ragnaros missed the Faith and went the Emperor...
Then he's in a really super strong position that... Yeah. I mean, he may even be trying... If I was in Fluffy's shoes, I think I'd be trying to prove that I could never lose.
Well, he actually did have... Well, hold on. That's not actually true because Shy had... Say if it missed, Shy could play Abyssal Enforcer for 6.
Yep.
Oh, sorry, he could play Dirty Rat for
yep.
1, Abyssal Enforcer for 6, and then Power Overwhelming Shadow Flame the Dirty Rat. And that would clear everything.
And, so
and pull out the last remaining minion from
And then
Fluffy.
just go Jiraxxus, make it over 6/6s.
So actually, Shy had a really strong case of winning that game from that position. So, yeah, I got told that Fluffy
like
had problems with his PC and has to remake. And Fluffy probably going to get frustrated because he felt like he had a really strong chance. But, you know, actually, I think the opposite. I think Reno Warlock was just about to turn that game around because that power-overing Shadow Flame was all affordable thanks to Emperor Thorson.
Right, but Fluffy was definitely going to get the 50-50.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
He gets the 50-50.
Half the time
and some
he
on
wins.
top, and half the time he has a chance.
Half the time he's most likely blown
But it
out of
certainly
the game.
wasn't enough to merit not regaming, and we're going into that regame, and we're going to do it all again. So, Dragon Priest versus Warlock. Frodan, tell us about this matchup. Frodan just, he hates me right now.
What was that, Lauren?
Yeah, exactly. I'm so sorry.
Well, looks like Fluffy's gotten a pretty decent start here, despite the fact that last game he didn't really have anything on 3 mana.
Yeah, he missed the early curve last time around, but he did have that Shadow Word Death, which came in handy. So if you can draw that, the game might be in a similar state.
How good is Scaled Nightmare or Nosdormu, do you think?
I do wonder how good Nosdormu might be against Reno Lock. You've got a hand of 10 cards, you're trying to calculate a million different things. Your opponent goes, nope, just press some buttons and get on with it.
I actually would have really liked the Zia Nosdormu pick. I know it sounds silly, but sometimes those outside factors that people aren't considering, like lack of time to play.
Especially when you're playing for one of the biggest tournaments in all of Hearthstone ever. And almost certainly, I mean, Shy did win the Time Major, but this is rather a step up from that. So a bit of pressure, and it's still an 8/8. It's not like it does nothing.
I consider that kind of to be a dirty play. What you end up doing, from my expertise of BMing on ladder, is you wait on turn 9 for the entire turn. You rope all the way down. You pretend you're gonna you have some really complicated play. Because the whole point is that you hover over a lot of cards to make your opponent feel like you have a lot of options. You make them make a lot of reads on you. And then just as the rope finishes out, you play Nosdormu, and then you let the rope burn out because it shakes the board. And your opponent has to kind of react to it immediately after they're introduced with this crazy scenario.
If only Fluffy has thought of that. He needs you to coach him right now, I think.
That's the tactics you got to use.
With that going on. He seems to be doing okay without that, though. He seems to be getting this board nice and wide, although this time the Shadow Flame is in Shy's hand, so he's going to have some pickups that are really, really helpful for him if this Twilight Drake lives.
Well, it's not the end of the world if he Shadow Flames, and I wouldn't really be too upset. Looks like he's just going to prioritize trying to take down this this Twilight Drake, because it is very threatening in the long run.
It's the Priest meme shape, guys. 4 attack. So he clears it up without really hurting his own board too badly as well. Playing around Shadow Flame pretty well there by keeping the Taunt up and the other guys above the 3 attack.
Yeah, not many good options here for Shy. I'd like to see him life tap here. Picks up Ragnaros. That's going to be useful later on, but for now, his options really seem to revolve around Earthen Ring Farseer to try and get some tempo back onto the board. He could also just kind of take it a little bit slow because he has a couple of AoE options in his hand for the following turns, but I feel like you want to fight back on the board to avoid having to use those AoEs first.
Yeah, we saw the turn where he Twisting Nethered before the remake, and even though he ended up doing it, he spent the whole turn trying to hold on to that AoE effect.
What a draw. Bookworm right on the money.
Yeah, I think Fluffy will be looking to try and find a situation which is, I play my Scaled Nightmare, and if you don't have Siphon Soul, you lose. On top of all the other obvious tempo that you're trying to do, I think the reason he picked that card is he feels he might be able to manipulate it to a situation where he just wins the game with it in one turn. But that's not gonna happen.
I don't necessarily think that if you don't kill Scaled Nightmare in one turn, you lose the game.
But if you've lost your Siphon or your Rag, for instance, then you do. A lot of the time. I think Fluffy might be aiming for that.
You sound like a Scaled Nightmare expert, Lorinda.
I watched all of Disguised Toast videos. So I know all about weird interactions of cards.
I'm sure you do. Yeah, I don't really know how much Scaled Nightmare tends to win games, but I think what the power of that card is that it's just a dragon to make sure that you get all these activators for, which sometimes is the problem when you're playing Dragon Priest. You just don't have the activators.
I mean, in fairness, if it won any games ever, people would put it in their deck, and they don't. There's the clue behind it all. If you get a card that's not in your deck, it's usually not a card you want. That's not always true. There's some cards that are fantastic as situationals. And just challenging now to have the Reno. So Shy has the Reno, so he can play it a bit more carefully. He doesn't have to drop the Reno this turn. But Fluffy is just challenging him to do this. And he's just going to take an instant 11 on the backswing if Fluffy wants to go that route. Or he may just tidy up the Reno. Plenty of options here to just keep this pressure going.
Yeah, the stat line of Reno is actually pretty annoying right now to deal with. You probably want to use Blackwing Corruptor and then have to change the damage there, but you were looking for a much cleaner tempo push here. I guess Blackwing Corruptor can be filled out with the Twilight Whelp and the Hero Power, but how scared are you to Dirty Rat? Your opponent's holding so many cards. It feels like you can pull out a really problematic minion.
Yeah, you've got the Shadow Word Pain, so if you rip out Jiraxxus, you kind of do well. But other than that, there's too much can go wrong, I feel, right now for Dirty Rat. If you're not going to Dirty Rat, though, you've got to find a way to have a recovery option if they play Twisting Nether, and that's why we're seeing Corruptor and Azure being kept back here, and just playing the 3/6 guy that says, well, you've still got to Nether, but I've got to come back play afterwards.
Sure, it means a lot. Well, it looks like this is an opportunity for Shy to clear the board through a Leroy Shadow Flame. It's perfectly at 6 health and 6 damage. Beating each other in the middle. And Fluffy picks up his Ragnaros. I think he's going to try to bait out the Siphon Soul first with the Scaled Nightmare.
It's going to work nicely as well, almost certainly. I don't think Shy is going to want to copy that, not in a Battle of Ragnarosses.
But I wonder if Shy just doesn't take the bait, instead he just plays Sylvanas. Or plays his own Ragnaros.
Play Sylvanas would be terrifying, because then you really don't want to lose this Scaled Nightmare if it's an 8/8 or a 4/8 even.
The problem with playing Sylvanas is that your opponent could play their Sylvanas, or if they discovered Sylvanas, because you don't know what they discovered, they have a chance of stealing it right back. So you have to be very mindful of what Draconoid Operative might potentially destroy what your plans are. And I know it sounds kind of out there because it's like, well, let's discover how can you play around it. But you know what's in your deck, and you just drew the Sylvanas, which is a reminder of what they could have. And he hasn't played that Dirty Rat yet, so it's very scary.
One thing to look out for with Shy, by the way, is against Zigzo yesterday. He lost a game where he got a little bit too brave. One of the keys to playing a good Reno lock is to be brave, to make sure you're not scared of your health total. But Shy actually lost a game where he tapped when he was in his 20s under a key number. And he just got blown out because of that. So that's something to watch out for him, if he does get greedy here.
All right, Fluffy once again trying to bait out something, maybe Twisting Nether, AoE removal. But Shadow Flame's already been used, so it's pretty much just Nether.
It's now or never.
Nether into Kazakis. He had the option of also tossing a Dirty Rat, which would have been okay. Like, if it pulled out Rag, it would have been awesome. If it pulled out Dirty Rat, it would have been pretty subpar.
Going for the 5 casting cost potion, which means obviously he's intending to do other things with that next turn. Seems like a 5 potion plus Sylvanas is probably a pretty good play a lot of the time.
Yeah, you know what's interesting about Heart of Fire is that you can actually play Sylvanas, steal one of their minions, and use the second effect on something else. So he has options at his disposal next turn.
So Fluffy making a natural play here, just cleaning up the. Yeah, this is just Hearthstone play. No deeper meaning to this. Just playing on curve, getting his cards out in the right order, and continuing the pressure that he's had since turn 1. Basically, that's how this matchup starts.
Shy still kind of trying to find a way to bait out a Shadow or Death prior to playing Ragnaros. Both these guys are looking to make the Ragnaros stick. So while it seems like, well, yeah, come on, Ragnaros is the strongest play that you have, it seems like they're being very conservative with this so far.
Yeah, not having 4 Ragnaroses this time around.
Shy does have... Oh, he doesn't want to draw anymore. Interesting.
That is interesting as well.
I was thinking about playing Kazakhstan and then just coiling, but looks like he doesn't want to. Oh, that's hilarious. What? Neighbor just comes back for removal.
Just sad minions.
That's an amazing Kazakhstan potion.
Yeah, how did he deal with this 4-1?
That was like Firelion's Portal on steroids. Deal 5 damage, summon a Leroy at a 4-1 for 5 mana.
And this is pretty key.
Going to the face is actually one of the worst
Yeah,
options.
don't think he wants that because this is going to get dealt with now.
Man.
He's the enemy out of direct damage, and Shy looking very, very strong here now.
He can steal the Rag and destroy the Rag. Or sorry, steal the Rag and play a Rag too.
To beat the Rag, you've got to be the Rag.
And he's got
He's
so
have
much
2
damage
Rags.
coming in. Fluffy's just going to concede at this point.
I just seen too many Rags. 6 Rags in that match, and it's 1-0 to Shy.
So Shy taking a win, which, you know, and again, I'm going to backtrack to the previous game where they had to disconnect and regame. I really feel like Shy was actually going to win that previous game. So, you know, sorry, assuming that Fluffy lost.
Yeah, he had the best part
the
of the
Rag.
second 50%. Yeah.
Right. So if he took that, then Fluffy should have been able to get that win. But if he didn't, then
but
Shy
Fluffy will feel like that was a 95-5 situation.
Right, because he had such a dominant position.
Because from where you're sat, you always think you're better than you are anyway, whoever you are in Hearthstone. And then he's got 50-50, plus he'll think that he had a dominant position. He doesn't know what was in Shy's hand. And he's got to be careful not to let that bother him here. We saw LB Dutchboy yesterday. I'm not saying it bothered him, but the way his results spiraled out of control after he thought he'd beaten Zigzo 3-0, there was a regame, and he went 0-5 on the day in the end. Again, not saying those two things are connected, but a player of his quality going 0-5 in that group was kind of surprising.
Yeah, a lot of times it is connected. Sometimes players just give up. When they go 0-3, they know they can't go through, so they just say, screw it, just who cares? And they end up giving up on the series. All right, going into game number 2, Rogue versus the Dragon Warrior, and that is a pretty okay curve for now. Shy does have something to coin out on the following turn.
And Shy has kept the Deathwing in this deck that he brought yesterday as well. Just mention that because that is one way to get through Conceal, and maybe of importance later on if this does go to turn 10 and beyond.
I was just going to ask if there was an opportunity for Fluffy to backstab Coin Edwin there and make a 6-6. I don't know if it's the best play, considering that Warrior can probably pick it apart a couple turns and you would lose a lot of your combo ability, but something worth thinking about.
Yeah, we saw PNC just make a 6-6 earlier. I mean, that was against Reno Lock, which just struggles really mightily to deal with an early 6-6, but definitely a consideration. Again, I just recall that story that Fluffy said yesterday, that when Fluffy challenged him about the good turn he had, he was like, yeah, I'm good at Rogue. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that that was probably the right play, just on the basis that Fluffy can't be wrong, apparently.
Well, if you look at the way things have transpired, I mean, I understand. Like, if he had Fiery War Axe, actually, that would be wrong. So yeah, I think you're right, yeah. So if he had Fiery War Axe, the 3-2 plus the weapon charge.
This is important, though, now. Obviously, he's just going to get the The whole point of this deck is conceal big minions and kill your opponent fairly quickly. That's exactly the situation he's going to get into here, with Sap, Eviscerate, and Cold Blood being almost the perfect minion cards for the situation as well, adding up to 5 mana.
Yeah, it's really powerful. Are you kidding me? That's super strong.
I mean, he's got to decide whether he wants the Cold Blood or the Small Time. He might even take the Small Time just because the Cold Blood will be useful later, but the Small Time is useful now.
Well, yeah, you want to set that damage in for the following turns. And if you think about it, it's also 4 damage, just like Cold Blood. You have 4 power on the board that you establish from it.
The extra 4 damage, and also the Cold Blood can be cycled with Auctioneer later. I mean, if we're talking about later as if there's going to be another turn.
Right, yeah, and that questing draw into the Conceal made all the difference in the world. For Fluffy having kind of an awkward hand, to him having a powerhouse turn 6 kill.
Yeah, this is just the power of Rogue and Questing Adventurer Conceal. Obviously, we saw the downside earlier as well, when you can just draw a handful of Cold Bloods and preparations, and that's why the deck is, it's not nerfed out of sight or anything, because it sometimes just gets a hand that does absolutely nothing.
Thank you. 7, 11, 12 damage right now. So, not exactly enough to kill, but he's got significant pressure coming in. It doesn't seem like Shy has any way to deal with this 7-7 right now.
And Fluffy has the luxury of being able to face tank 5 damage there just to protect a 1-1 for that extra piece of damage. Having to kill the minion so that the Questing Adventurer just doesn't ever die. And Fluffy not at all affected by the look of things from that regame situation.
I mean, he is playing a little bit quickly.
And he has drawn his Comfort class as well.
But I'm pretty, I mean, this is just lethal right now, but the fact that Fluffy was able to, wow, look at that, Blood so cold.
That's actually really funny.
But the fact that Fluffy's been able to win this game really fast is something that helps, reverse a little bit of the emotion. If he felt any. Like, we're not saying that he's tilted or anything, but, sometimes if you do feel it like that, having a very strong, convincing win is enough to even up the series. Some players, they really can't unthink about it, though. Some of them are like, I should be up 2-0, not 1-1.
I mean, I've only spoken to Fluffy a handful of times, but he gives the demeanor of a guy who is pretty easygoing. He's in with a Swedish group, Orange and Spo and Powder and those sort of guys, Death Boos. They're not exactly a stressful bunch of guys.
Okay. Well, in that case, I'm perfectly confident that he's just chill. He's chilling.
Just chilling at 1-1 in the top 12 of a gigantic Hearthstone tournament. Definitely the biggest tournament Fluffy's been deep into.
So the Warlock Shaman Priest up against the Warrior Mage Priest. Looking at what remains here, I'm trying to figure out the best options for either of these guys in terms of who's the favored one from this position. And I feel like just having Shaman in the lineup is a really good thing, but maybe that's what Shy is accounting for, and that's why he didn't ban Shaman. So if I'm Fluffy, I probably will stay away from Shaman as much as I can.
Yeah, I think that maybe Shy really fancies that his Priest can take down the Shaman. I think that's one of the more contentious matchups that people argue about. Something there, but I just don't like letting the power level of Shaman loose. I'd rather it just not be there, and I'll take my chance with the pirates, whatever other nonsense is there, and let's not have Shaman doing its thing. See how this works out for him.
Fluffy picking a Dragon Priest up, but Dragon Priest needs a fast start in order to get that dominant hold against the Reno Mage. Reno Mage is the one that's curving out right now.
Yeah, and the Water Elemental is a big part in continuing that. The Priest just seems to find a way nearly always in this matchup, though. No matter what its start, no matter what the mid-game, you're getting towards the end, and unless the Mage does something involving a stupid Kazakus, it tends to really peter out of stuff after it's used all its AoE.
Look at some of the awkwardness of having things like Defender of Argus, too. It's just not really playable as a 4-mana minion by itself, at least at this position. And Fluffy's fallen really far behind, being susceptible to the ever-looming Priest problem of just having too many situational reactive cards.
Yeah, and he's got to decide how he wants to use his Northside Clerics here, whether he just wants to, just stick them on the board, partly to make your Defender of Argus less of a sitting duck, and partly just to challenge something out there.
But with the Burgle Bully coming out, that's going to be really annoying for Fluffy to deal with. because that 4/6 body is so annoying to tack on. And most likely going to give a coin to Shy at some point in the game.
Burgly Bully. Who thinks up the names for these cards? Do they have a separate design team?
I'm sure they do. They have like, well, you know what ends up happening from what I heard is that they actually have a bunch of people that that do a test name for a card.
Right.
And then sometimes those cards stick.
So like, Burgly Bully sounds a bit like that, right? It's like, what are we going to call this stupid card? Let's call it Burgly Bully.
Well, it's a Burgle Buddy. So it's not a Burgly Bully.
Yeah, they just cut a letter off.
So a Burgle Bully is supposed to be like how he steals, and he's just like a mafia guy that steals. An example of what I was talking about is the Ball of Spiders card. Originally, they weren't going to call it Ball of Spiders. They just kind of like... this is what I was told by, I think, Ben Brode. He was saying that originally it was going to be something else, but like as a tentative name, they're just like Ball of Spiders because it's an internal joke at Blizzard that they say, I just want to name a card like something like stupid, like Ball of Spiders. And like, oh, that'd be funny if we did that one day. And then when Ball of Spiders was in development, they're just kind of like, we'll call it Ball of Spiders for now, but remember someone else should change it. And then when they're going through the R&D process, they're like, yeah, actually, it's a ball of spiders.
Because it makes spiders and it's a ball. Yeah, that's awesome. So, just like that, Fluffy has reversed this board state, and now we're going into what looks like a more normal situation for Priest versus Mage. Although the Mage is assembling Alexstrasza and Pyroblasts and Archmages, and the Priest hasn't done any damage.
Yeah, the one thing that's really hard to deal with the Reno Priest as the Dragon, with the Reno Mage as the Dragon Priest, is that Reno Mage actually can burn you down as a win condition, and you don't have a lot of traditional heal. So Fluffy's going to have to be careful about that. And the way you usually combat that is not just to like play reactively, but actually be very aggressive. And look at that, Ice Block pickup. That's huge. Ice Block being picked up means that Shy is very confident in being able to set up an Alexstrasza and not worry too much about dying on the backswings of stuff.
And this just looks like the start of 2016 Freeze Mage.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like Shy to consider holding on to the Polymorph here and just maybe Flame Strike this board. And then if your opponent plays a Ragnaros, you can Polymorph it. And then kind of play Ice Block, setting up into a really good Alexstrasza. And
Flame Strike probably was never going to get any better than that because all of the Priest stuff just gets buffed out of range anyway. So if you can get 2 for 1, it's about as good as you're going to get out of that particular card. And it buys you a little bit of time to set up how you're going to actually finish this game off with this hand that is starting to look like it's going to just burn Fluffy out at some point.
Kazakus is actually a huge pickup here for the Draconoid Operative because if you're able to pick up armor of some kind or some way to remove stuff and doing it simultaneously, that could be game-changing.
He's also just seen Flame Strike, and now he knows that Kazakus is not in the hand of Shy, so that'll give him the license to go a little bit wider than he might otherwise go as well.
Yeah, I'm interested by Cabal Courier. I think Fluffy is trying to pick up just heal in general. Yes. Or maybe reach. Maybe he feels like his reach needs to be better.
Here we go. The beginning of the beating, but oh my goodness.
I mean, Shadow or Death is very important here. It almost feels like Fluffy doesn't have enough time. He's doing 9 damage, which is very significant.
The Shadow of Death helped there in regards... I mean, I think you're right. I don't think he's going to have enough time. But it helped there in regards that it meant that he was able to develop the board with the extra mana. He could deal with the 8/8 anyway, but dealing with it for the cost of the fact that he can now deal with Antonidas as well, basically gave him some chance. But this is just 2-turn lethal, and Fluffy's going to have to...
Well, actually, he didn't choose to Fireball this turn because he expected Fluffy to heal. If he was able to Fireball ping Ice Block, set up for a Pyroblast, and that is a 2-turn lethal. But he's trying to make it so his opponent just uses Shadow or Death. Unlikely for him to deal with this very easily, but that's where he's wrong. Fluffy actually does have a way to deal with it pretty effectively.
Yeah, and that was clever last turn from Fluffy, by the way. You're almost always encouraged to use the card that's been stuck in your hand forever. And Fluffy actually used the one that he ripped off the top to encourage the Antonidas to be played a little bit prematurely. Although, I say prematurely, this is coming right down to the wire.
Yeah, Shy can't play all of his fireballs. And Fluffy's going to pop that ice block next turn, and I think Shy played a little bit too slow.
Can Fluffy get out of range? He can if he Holy Novas, right? Because next turn, Shy can play the Reno plus a Fireball.
Yeah, I mean, what I was looking for from Shy was to play ice block and Antonitis at the same time. So that way he didn't have to choose, and he could double Fireball, which made all the difference. Because if he double Fireballed, he actually wins, because his opponent's at 9.
Fluffy is going to have to get to 18.
Shy,
no, he's only going to get to 17, which he can do. No, he's got to get to 18.
Well, so if Reno's here, Reno and Fireball, is that enough?
But he can't get the ping. He can't get the ping in that he's going to need to get that extra 1 point of damage to if Fluffy heals again. So he's got 16 in hand, and Fluffy can get to 17. So normally you would just ping, but the Reno's going to gobble up all that extra mana. And so the other option for Shy is to try and stop Fluffy killing him from 30 in 2 turns. And that looks difficult.
Yeah, this is really tough in general. Is there a card that could dig him out of the situation through Azure Drake? I don't feel like it. I think you have to play Reno.
So we realize the Fireball option doesn't work. So is there something else he can do that involves not Fireballing? But that just seems silly. Unless you can maths it so you don't take 30 damage in the 2 turns, if your opponent doesn't have Fireball and Ragnarok in their hand, which we can see he does. So if something strange happens here, it's because Shy is playing to an out, which involves Fluffy not having damage in hand. Because that's how he's working in his ping that we were talking about.
6, 10, 16 on the board, plus the Fireball is 23. If he plays Ragnaros, that's 24 damage if it goes all face. So it's not enough no matter what he does. He's going to stick with this Ragnaros line.
And just out of range. Can't see how Shy can get out of this.
Okay, so if he Frost Novas, if he drew Frost Nova, he actually had a chance because he could Polymorph Frost Nova and then try to see if he can bail out that way. But right now he's under threat of just dying.
So something like Dirty Rat. Hope your opponent hasn't got any minions. Just for the block. You've also got the option of Torching Face instead of Fireballing. That allows you to Azure Drake. It doesn't look very pretty, does it?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you have to kind of set up an optimistic scenario where your opponent doesn't have any damage.
Yeah.
And so he's just going for that. He's going to try to see if your opponent has no damage to end the game.
Yeah, this is
But even this, if your opponent healed, you still wouldn't have a lethal. I think Shy just kind of threw his opportunity to win the game back when he went for an Antonitis Ice Lance instead. Because he was thinking, well, he used his death. He used it off the top. And Fluffy kind of baited him with that because he played the top decked Shadow Word Death. So a job well done to Fluffy, and Shy had that opportunity. I feel like that game was his.
Yeah, he definitely had the good start. That always does get reversed unless crazy things happen, so that did get reversed. But Fluffy just didn't push any damage through, and Shy, it feels like a strong Freeze Mage player would have unlocked the mysteries of that hand.
Well, I mean, just think, if you just think about if he used the Ice Block, then he would have been able to have Ice Block up, double Fireball the following turn, and his opponent, and then he would just Pyroblast, and then over the course of 2 turns do 22 damage. His opponent just couldn't.
And that was plenty, sure. Yeah, that would have been working out really well. All right, so this is the Shaman that Shy has chosen to leave up, and that Frodan is terrified of because it's Shaman, as am I.
Well, I'm actually more scared for the Shaman because Reno Mage tends to destroy Shaman these days through the most unexpected ways. I'm saying like Babbling Book picks up AoE that you can't ever play around, or it plays around something that's like directly against something that you're.
Well, like Cone of Cold, for instance.
Sure.
That's
Cone of Cold
absolutely,
Doomsayer.
yeah.
You're not playing around that ever.
Wow. And yeah, called it on turn 1 from Frodan that this is going to pick up a good card. And there's a lot of good cards, that's the point, right?
Well, this could be something that Shy looks at and says, well, maybe I should deal with this through Doomsayer. Maybe I could save it. It's hard to say because it's so easy for Shaman to generate that damage at this point. They have 5 ready on the board. If they have a Lightning Bolt, if they had the Flame Tongue Totem, if they had some way to boost the Tunnel Trog through Overload, like there's just a lot of ways for it to die. So when you play the Doomsayer, you're not expecting it to go off. You're just trying to buy time and buy health.
And as far as I remember, I think Fluffy's deck is entirely like as everybody understands Shaman to be. So we saw the Bloodlust earlier, is why I mentioned that, which would make a biggish difference here. But he doesn't have that. He's just playing an aggro Shaman deck, topping out at Aya, as per we've seen many times this weekend.
All right, the ever-important Kazaka is looking for the 4 damage AoE. Gains 7 armor, deal 4 damage. He probably picked, he did pick the armor, because I said he probably picked Freeze as a backup option, but he chose the most optimistic line. He said gain 7 armor, got that 4 damage AoE. And now he's cooking, but Fluffy's got so much damage in the hand. He's got 5 from the Lava Burst, and 6, 7, 11, 13 on the board. That's so much. You basically put your opponent within kill range the next turn.
The only thing that will be going through Fluffy's mind as a downside of this Lava Burst is he'd like to play Aya next turn, but he's going to Lava Burst because the Trog is on the board. Why waste that extra 2 damage? Smash his opponent in the face and challenge him to have a way out of this.
This is saying you have to have Reno because he knows his opponent has coin. Shy doesn't have Reno, but he has something that's kind of okay as well because this gains him life, which is really important. It's AoE and life. Because if you played Reno, your opponent can just hit you again for 11. Or,
yeah, this 9. Is why Reno is not quite as absurd as some people feel that it is. Quite often you play this 4/6 minion that's trying to fight off a board of 17 attack, and he just buys you a turn. He acts like an ice block for a turn at most sometimes. And Fluffy's just going to be able to generate another board. And if Reno doesn't turn up here, I think Fluffy will take this down just through attrition. Like 2-turn or 3-turn attrition, not a hugely long game attrition, just to clarify.
Wild Elemental can be pretty impactful, stopping Fluffy from getting damage with the weapon if you got a spell damaged minion. And looks like Fluffy is trying to go for a spell damage totem, recognizing he had a chance to lethal there. Doesn't get it though.
But in a pretty good spot nonetheless. Well, you'd rather have the lethal, but this is so close.
So close, but he's so far.
That's not a Reno, and so Cone of Cold doesn't work, but he doesn't know that. Cone of Cold like freezes this all up. You can freeze face with the
water elemental.
Water
so
elemental.
You're still alive. Well, he's still alive based off what we know from Fluffy's hand, but if he picks up a single spell damage totem or another damage source.
All right, 1 in 3 for Fluffy to just take it.
And looks like he got it. So Fluffy gonna take a 3-1 lead and shutting down the Reno Mage, a huge win because Shy was not able to stabilize. And as much as we can look at how Fluffy was able to run over Shy, it does feel like Shy had a couple of choices as disposal.
Yeah, early on in that game, what was the play? There was a play we weren't sure about at all.
So the turn
with the Doomsayer.
Do you think that's okay? I mean, I don't think it's a bad play. I just think like, do you have to Doomsayer in that position?
So you heal for 7, obviously, is a massive upside straight away. And if you try to hold on for Doomsayer Cone of Cold, he may not even have got to that turn.
Or just maybe Doomsayer plus something else on like turn 4 because you could torch.
Yeah,
maybe.
But you don't throw out Doomsayer thinking it's going to survive. You're throwing it out there saying I'm just going 2 mana, heal my face for 7, or gain 7 armor, however you want to word that.
Just something you got to ask yourself to see if there's anything else you can improve. But maybe
that's right.
You're
talking about how to improve, and every game you play, there's decisions like that where if you look at them and decide you made the right play, you learn something even if you made the right play by actually just analyzing what else you could have done.
Yeah, well, realistically speaking, there's also another problem that players have, which is like overanalyzing stuff. Sometimes you made the right play and there's nothing else you can do, and sometimes you just lose. That's just how the way the cards fall.
No, I always win. Yeah, okay. I could have always won. No, that's not true either. You're right, sometimes it's just how it turns out. Fluffy choosing not to play the Mistress here. So is that for dirty rat protection, do you think?
Well, I mean, I don't feel like right now there's a super need to put something out onto the board for the Reno Mage. I think fighting for value in terms of what you get in the cards is okay, because Arcane Intellect gets clunkier as time goes on. So I think it was okay to draw there instead of coining out a play.
Okay. Fluffy going to pretend he's Zoo just for a turn or two, except it's turn 5 Zoo with 2 mana. See what he gets off this. Oh, he's going the other way. He's going to tidy this up, recognizing that it's one of the few minions in the whole of Shy's deck that is any sort of realistic threat.
And it does feel a little bit liberal use of the Hellfire, but remember what we were talking about, where you have too many cards in your hand, you need to start freeing up opportunities.
Yeah, if this game goes particularly long, you tend to lose it. One way you can win it as the Warlock is to get Jiraxxus down and get a 1-mana potion to get you 4 armor. That's a tricky play that Lovely Chook used really well in Gold Series, but other than that, you kind of have to fight for the board early or you do start getting into trouble.
Yeah, I mean, Shy is very clearly holding on to Brand Kazakus for turn 6, so he can coin that out. Burgle Bully is his best option to... Oh, interesting. Oh, he's using the coin now, so he can try to... Oh, okay, never mind, sorry. He's trying to make sure not to overdraw. I was like a little bit confused as to why he's coining here. But just in case his opponent did end up playing a spell, he doesn't want to be overdrawn. That's awkward. Because now you gave up the extra turn that you can use Bran and Kazakus.
And it's only dawned on him after he played it as well.
Oh, man. In that case, I almost feel like maybe you'd want to try to play something else instead.
I was wondering if Fluffy could do anything, but he doesn't really have much of use. So he's just going to get on with his life, I think, here. And
I don't really see anything too wrong with Emperor Thor's hand in this position.
yeah, you've got decent cards to reduce. It's always nice to reduce a hand of cheaper cards rather than a hand of 10 drops. Like reducing a hand of 10 drops to 9 drops, nothing changes. Reducing a hand like this gives you so many more options in the coming turns to do 2 or 3 things at one time.
Looks like Shy just going to have to remove that Emperor Thor's hand. Too threatening to keep on board. Fluffy looking away for him to remove that, but the only thing that he can do is Mortal Coil, which gives him a coin. So, you know, the fact that Shy lost to Ice Lance, usually it's like a pretty big hit onto your Antonidas, because you want to be able to use coin and Ice Lance to gain fireballs. But he gains the coin back, so not all is lost. The Burgle Bully able to annoy the opponent and give him a coin. So I think it's all right.
Fluffy. These games, you're looking at the hands and suddenly you just realize how many options both players have got, by the way. Fluffy deciding not to hold on to the brand for Kazakus or anything like that. Just going to get the value in the short term, recognizing this is a pretty unfavored matchup and trying to get on with it sooner rather than later.
Well, I mean, according to the stats, it's pretty even in terms of win percentages.
Yeah, and I know D2 agrees with that as well.
But one thing that I think Fluffy could be looking for is a way to extend his damage. You know, if you have another Power Overwhelming that you can draw, or if you have Soul Fires, that's ways that you can reach the Reno Mage when sometimes you really can't do anything to them.
Yeah, your cards are just fundamentally worse than the Reno Mage, but you have more of them. That's where the paradox of the whole situation lies. What sort of phrase did I just use there? Yeah, it's like you've got to untangle this situation where you've got bad cards compared to your opponent, but you can use them first. And if the game goes longer and longer, things like your Kazakus, you're just going to lose because the mage is going to do the same thing, and he's just going to have better stuff to do. All right, Finance Portal, always a way to turn games around. This is no exception. And Shy grabbing that board with a really awkward shaped 3-6 as well.
Well, Fluffy looks like he's going to play the Dirty Rat. Pulls out a Doomsayer. That's not what he was looking for. I think he was hoping to hit actually any one of the other cards. If Kazakus came out, if Brand came out, if Alexstrasza came out, brand new game. A little bit unfortunate here for Fluffy.
Yeah, like you say, even the Courier would be better than this. The only thing this does is saves him a Twisting Nether, but just not what he was looking to save at all.
Well, I think you can just tap and then maybe dump your Corruption. This might be an opportunity for you just to dig a little bit deeper into your deck. There is an opportunity to remove the... I mean, you can try and remove the Doomsayer, but I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah, now you've used the back. It's just an unfortunate situation. Choosing to keep the Corruption as he currently doesn't have a particularly great way of dealing with something like Alex Driver, other than twisting Nether.
Interesting. Shy chooses to Alex when Fluffy hasn't played his Reno yet.
Siphoned Soul off the top is definitely a card of use here, but Fluffy can't push this right. He can't Corruption and try not to die. It's just too risky.
No, I think you Siphon, you kind of let your opponent try to burn you down, because they really can't burn you from 18. They don't have like the Ice Lances to support it. And then once they start burning you again, you just go straight for the Reno and pull him out. So Shy lost a lot of damage possibility there. But Shy can make it up if he just gets some good Kazakus potions. Start with a 5, see what you get. I think you're looking for either direct damage or summoning minions on your board.
Yeah, that was a pretty bad one, I think, there. And we didn't see what that was at the end.
I wouldn't mind taking a 10 in this position, but the 5 was so bad, maybe you want to take another 5.
Don't know what the first half, the 5 was. The second half was summon 2.
There we go. Deal 8 damage.
Deal 8.
Maybe draw 3 cards so you can draw into your other stuff, like your burn.
Deal 8 and 10 armor he actually went for, I think.
I wonder if I like Cabal Chemist. I'm not a big fan of Fisted Jiraxis in general. It's too costly for a random effect. I guess the irony is Cabal Chemist is actually the same exact thing.
The Chemist seems to have slightly more upside, though.
Spawn of Shadows. So he's got Spawn of Shadows, Fisted Jiraxis hero power, and that could be 9 damage to the face. He's got a lot of potential burn.
Yeah, and he goes for that. And Fluffy won't be able to play around all of this. He's going to be very, very careful not to walk into an accident here.
Yeah, I'm sensing... I feel like you need to use one of your AoEs here, like Demon Wrath or maybe the Shadow Bolt to help remove. But looks like Fluffy feels okay with that. Probably going to play Reno in this position as well.
Usually would take an 8/8 Demon here, I think. You don't have that much aggressive option in your deck. Didn't see what the second was. That was very, very quick.
Oh boy.
8/8 and armor, so if he can survive one turn after Jiraxising, he just wins the game. But setting it up so you survive one turn when your opponent's refusing to use their burn is an easier said than done proposition.
It's a lot of damage coming into Shy's hand. He can get fireballs through the Antonites. He's got a 9 damage burst through Spawn of Shadow's Fist to Drax's face, and then pink face, and he's got fireball with Frostbolt still. So by all means, even if Fluffy Renos, there is a chance for Shy to burn him out. But I feel like it's slipping away if he goes too all in here. Like say he starts using so much burn, and then Fluffy heals and he has to start over again. So he has to kind of be cautious here.
All right, so there's the health swing card, just 18 points difference, but...
Oh, he is playing around Reno. He's playing around Renos by trading to the minion.
Well, Fluffy knows that Shy can't do 15, so let's do this and then go into the Kazakus potion next turn, which is make an 8/8 and gain 10 armor and see if he can win it from there.
He's thinking about Jiraxis.
Yeah, because he was on 15 last turn and didn't die. He was on 18, but Shy had a 3/3. So if he didn't die from 15 last turn, he won't die from 15 this turn, which means he can get the potion off and gain 10 armor. And now he's going to be on Jiraxis with 25 health. Plus Reno, if he gets down to sort of a lowish total, he can heal back up to 15. It's not totally dead.
Oh man, I'm not sure. I feel like your opponents just played double Kazakus potion.
Yep.
Double Cabal Courier, and it's very clearly when he's like burning your face for 10 or 8 damage, I feel like it's a pretty strong indication that he just wants to kill you, and he doesn't necessarily even have to put you down to like 7. He can put you down to 12, and now you're really threatened by what you have to do. You have to kind of Reno in this position.
I mean, the potion makes... I mean, yeah, you've got to kill this Archmage. That's the problem, because your potion does give you the 10 armor. But I think you're right. He's going to have to need Reno to put something on the board.
Oh, I don't know. I think Fluffy maybe just is dead.
Reno, Shadow Flame.
Yeah, I mean he has to kill, but then that's his last heal. I guess the Kazakus potion, you're right, gives him the armor.
The 10 armor and 6/6s kill you quickly. This is going to be a bit of a race, I think.
Okay.
And I think you're right. I think your money's on the right horse, but I don't think this is over yet.
It's not over yet, but Fluffy put himself in a really disadvantageous
How about if he
position.
Shadow Flames his own his Sylvanas, steals Antonidas, and starts
Then
making
then he's dead.
fireballs, dying.
He like really knows his opponent probably has fireballs
Yeah.
following up. So, yep, Shadow Flame and try to trade. And then Shy, all he has to do is probably play like one burn spell and just something reasonable to pressure.
Yep. And then we'll see Fluffy make an 8/8, gain 10 armor. And then we will see how it transpires from there. Whether somehow Fluffy can use these 6/6s to do the damage quick enough.
But he still has Spawner Shadows as a way to deal direct damage. And he's got Fist of Jiraxis, so that's kind of funny too.
But the race is well and truly on here. I mean, Fluffy, don't forget, Spawner Shadows does hurt yourself as well. It's not purely direct damage.
It's true.
And we've seen Shy use his Frostbolt. We've seen him use his Portal. We've seen him use both Fireballs. He's out of burn, or a lot of it. But he still has freeze, pings, and, you know, he has the Fist, Spawn. He has a lot of ways of doing bits and pieces. Might come down to a Fist of Jiraxis, Frodo.
Well, I mean, I think Shy is going to try to Kazakus Potion first and play Ink Master Solia to put some pressure onto the board here. Summoning the minions back can also be really problematic for Fluffy. There are some juicy minions that did die earlier in this game.
Yeah. Doomsayer being one. I think Doomsayer's gone.
Well, Doomsayer's just game
That's
live.
just
so,
like game
you know,
live.
I'm thinking more like Water Elemental, and some of these other things are just like kind of annoying to deal with.
See how it works out.
Time runs out on me.
Kazakus and Brand.
Wow.
I feel like you have to kill him too.
What's your best bet for doing this? I mean,
I
twisting
mean-
the other hero power is not a disaster here, right?
Yeah.
Just hit your opponent for 10, twisting the other hero power. Seems like you keep the initiative that way.
You don't actually set up a 2-turn lethal though.
No,
But-
that's been a problem for him for a while. He's just not had the right shapes going on. But he's going to be able to set up. He's got enough taunt that he's not dying to minions anytime soon. It's going to have to be the burn option from Shy, and I don't think Shy's got enough burn to do this.
Well, he can polymorph and then ping with Spawner Shadows and put his opponent lower.
Is there a chance this ends as a draw?
There is a chance that it ends in a draw, but I don't think it's that high. And he also dealt 4 damage to himself, so he puts himself within range of potential death because his opponent still has a Jiraxis weapon.
Oh my goodness! He says as he ruins the microphone for the second time this week.
Ragnaros has the 50-50. Is that the best chance here?
Right, so he's got to decide whether he thinks he's got an even better than 50-50 chance under any circumstances. But yeah,
The
just do
Spawn of
this.
Shadows cost Shy the game.
And now
Because
he's
it
got
did damage to himself.
got to defend himself. You've put me in this position, Spawn of Shadows. You've got to get me out of it. Take the hit for the team.
Oh no, it didn't end the game. And this 8 damage. If he picks up some other damage source like Roaring Torch. Oh no, it's not it.
You win.
Oh man, that was close.
Wow, and
That was
Fluffy,
really close.
given the circumstances of game
Wow.
one, to be honest, has managed to keep himself together really
4
well
to
here.
1.
Some players would have gone to pieces there.
Yeah.
But Fluffy has played a very good series of Hearthstone there. And Shy also played well. I think we found 1 or 2 spots where maybe he could have made different decisions that would have gone down divergent paths at the very least.
He shut me up, man. I was kind of worried a little bit about the Jiraxis play because I was like,
Right.
man, you have an opportunity to really outlast the burst, but It worked out for him because the Kazakus potion was able to gain him just enough life, and he was able to put pressure through 6/6s that made it awkward for the Reno Mage. So, job well done, and I'm willing to bite the bullet there and say that Fluffy really knew better than us, at least.
Yeah, I mean, Fluffy definitely putting himself into contention properly this tournament. Picks up $5,000 as well already.
Yep.
Always nice to have that back in your back pocket at the start of the day.
Sure.
He's got Stars in the next round, so he's trying to just rip through the APAC region here. But Stars already qualified twice for the APAC HCT Championships this season, and just a very, very tricky customer.